Welcome to the first meeting of the League of Women Voters of Colorado Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force. I have been the generating force behind this task force, and I'm happy that you all are here for our first meeting. I want to make this very inclusive. I want it to be what we need, in Colorado. I just moved to Colorado in December, so if there's any local issues that you'd like to bring up, I'd be happy to hear them. If you have any suggestions, please let me know of any kinds of speakers or advocacy that you think we should be doing. Our speaker tonight is Reggie Johnson. She's from One Colorado. And Reggie, her, is the North Colorado regional organizer for the Freedom to Marry campaign. She's working to make same-sex marriage legal for all LGBTQ plus Coloradans. The passion Reggie has for this marginalized community comes from having 4 rainbow connections among her kids and grandkids, and she is striving to make their lives easier and their legal rights without barriers. After living and working in Fort Collins for over 6 decades, Reggie is currently retired, and her hobbies include photography, playing the piano, and watching trivia game shows. So I thought one way we would start today, welcome Reggie, thanks for coming,
Thank you.
is to, I have a little icebreaker and it's a little weird, so I'll share my screen. I thought oh wait, that's the wrong thing. Hold on. I thought what we would do is write your biography in 7 words. So I'll give you like 2 minutes. Like you could say something like jail, travel, study, work, happy, things like that. 7 words to write your whole biography. And then we could get to know each other a little bit better. So we'll just take a few minutes. Do you need a few minutes more, or is everybody ready? Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay.
7 words. Okay. Well, I think we're all going to probably, a lot of us going to say this: mother, grandmother, environmentalist, humanitarian, biker, gardener, and reader.
Wow, you're a busy woman.
I am busy.
So what is your favorite DEI issue? Do you have one? Or not favorite, favorite's not a good word for DEI really, but what are you
That's
most
that I just want justice for everybody.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's my I have no, I'm a member of PFLAG as well. And I
Uh-huh.
don't know if most of you know who PFLAG is, but I just want justice.
Great. Does anybody else want to go, or should I call on people?
I can go.
Okay.
I'm also with PFLAG, Nancy.
Okay.
I'm not with the whatever the other UAW, whatever it was. Anyway, my 7 words are family, encourager, perfectionist, wise, wise acre. I was going to say something else, but I didn't know if I could say that. So, perceptive and committed.
Wow. That's very good. Thank you.
And my highest DEI priority at this very moment is what you'll hear about later, the freedom to marry. But I also have 3 of my 4 rainbow kiddos are transgender. And so that's very high on my priority.
Thank you. I'll go next. Transient, Germany, protester, working, travel, retired, happy. So I really feel like once I retired, I was able to do what I'm passionate about. And I finally learned all the things that we never learned in high school about how things really were, what slavery really was like, what you know, what laws have impacted people of different races, how marginalized communities have been marginalized. And so that's my passion right now. Would anybody else like to go?
I can go.
Okay.
I'm definitely creative. I think that'd be number one. Mother, grandmother. I feel like I'm kind. I love to travel. I'm very giving, especially to my community.
Mhm.
I'm aware of what's going on around the world, plus locally. And I think I'm very caring. And I think the caring is I care that everyone is treated equally, no matter what. We're all
Mhm.
human beings. We're all different. We all, none of us are the same unless we're identical twins. And, we should all be treated equally.
Yes, definitely. I think everybody here feels that way, and that's why we're here. So I'm glad that we have something that holds us together. So who would like to go next?
I can go next. And I want to say, Reggie, I believe I've crossed paths with you. I've attended the Transgender 101 workshop this past year
Yep.
and another event that I'm trying to remember. But so it's good to see you. I started with mother, activist, social worker, animal lover, warrior, not well, warrior too, but I worry more than most, volunteer, and environmentalist.
Well, we have a lot of environmentalists too, so everybody cares not only about the community and marginalized peoples, but also about the environment. So
Yeah.
that's really good. Barbara is coming in and out because she's also attending another meeting
Huh.
that the League in Arapahoe Douglas is having tonight. So I don't know, Barbara, are you here? I think she might be otherwise engaged. Jenna, would you like to go or?
Sure. I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit because mine are not words but phrases.
Okay,
If,
that's
if
fine.
that's okay. And I'm not sure that I got 7. Maybe it's like 5. Natural resources,
Mhm.
analytics and AI, long distance hiker, retired Forest Service BLM, and transitioned in 2008.
Awesome. So there we have another environmentalist and long distance hiker like Nancy, and we have a lot of mothers and grandmothers, and I think this is a really good working group to start. So thank you all for being here.
And I guess my interest is really bodily autonomy, which kind of goes into a whole number of fields, reproductive rights, transgender rights, and many other things. Basically, the freedom to be who you are
Yes,
and who you
definitely.
love.
Yes, definitely. So I sent out proposed ground rules. I'll put them up really quickly. I think that um did you guys have a chance to see them yesterday?
I don't remember getting them, so maybe it went to spam or something.
I don't
Okay.
remember doing them either.
Here we go. I think these are all pretty non-controversial. This is a safe space for personal experience. Listen actively and stay mentally engaged. Respect others when they are talking. Speak from your own experience instead of generalizing. Use I instead of they or we or you. Don't be afraid to respectfully challenge one another by asking questions, but refrain from personal attacks. Focus on ideas. Participate to the fullest of your ability. Community growth depends on the inclusion of every individual voice. Instead of invalidating somebody else's story with your own spin on his or her experience, share your own story and experience. The goal is not to agree, it's to gain a deeper understanding. Be conscious of body language and nonverbal responses. They can be as disrespectful as words, and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'd like those to guide our conversation together today. If anybody would like a copy of them, I'm going to put them on the JEDI Task Force website, which is on if you just type in LWVCO on Google, you'll get the League of Women Voters of Colorado and drop down to JEDI Task Force. But does anybody have anything that they're concerned about with these rules? These are just guidelines to start with. As we get further into our group, I imagine we might want to change some things, and that's fine too, but I just thought that would start us off. Does anybody have anything? Okay. So I thought we'd talk today, start today with Reggie. Reggie's going to talk about the Freedom to Marry ballot measure, as well as some of the false trans narratives that are reverberating around the community. We're seeing a big backlash, especially in schools, on DEI issues, especially against LGBTQ students and students of color. Barbara, you have
No,
something?
I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. I didn't mean to
You're on
interrupt
mute.
you. I just wanted to remind you to start the recording, and there are several of us that will be watching it once we're out of our meeting tonight, so, or tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah, I did
Thank you
start
so
it.
much.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay. Reg, you want to share your screen,
Sure.
or do you want to just be for your screen share? Whichever you want.
All right, so I'm sharing. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. Those are portable hugs that we make in PFLAG to pass out to people at Pride so that they can carry them around and know that they're loved no matter where they go. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. All right, so let me share. Oops. Oh, you all dropped to the bottom of my screen. Here we go. All right, so I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here. Seems like you all are pretty much on board, but I'll go through the specifics, and I have a lot of information, so I'll just kind of bomb through and we can ask questions at the end if that's okay. My name's Reggie Johnson, she, her, hers. I'm the Northern Colorado Regional Organizer for the Freedom to Marry campaign. And here's my email address if you need it, reggie@freedomtomarryco.org. I'll put it up again at the end as well. So This year was a busy year, even in Colorado, for LGBTQ ballot initiatives. So the Freedom for All Coloradans, Freedom for All Coloradans coalition was started earlier this year, and it's made up of members and leaders in the LGBTQ community, our allies, all who are committed to protecting the freedom to marry in Colorado, as well as opposing any anti-LGBTQ plus initiatives that are put forth by the conservative activists in Colorado. And at the beginning of our coalition, the League of Women Voters of Colorado stepped up right away and endorsed the Freedom for All Coloradans coalition, as well as the campaign. So as Kathy was saying, far-right extremists are attacking trans youth in Colorado, focused mostly on three things: restricting individual rights. These include forced outing in the schools, a ban on trans girls competing in athletics, and a ban on gender-affirming care for youth. So just to go through each one of those just a little bit, the forced outing in the schools is number 142. So these all went through the citizen-initiated ballot process. So number 142 made it all the way through the title board. We did a Supreme Court challenge, and then it still made it through all of that. They went out to collect signatures. So that's what this means, approved for circulation. But they were not able to collect enough signatures in the short amount of time that they had. So it is not on the ballot. But just to give you an idea, kind of a sense of what they're doing, they call it gender incongruence, which nobody outside of nobody within the community actually calls it gender incongruence. But anyway, and these are taken right out of their petition. And it says gender incongruence means the difference between a child's biological sex and the child's perceived or desired gender. Another definition in it, there's a bunch more than just this, but the public school representative means any public school administrator, teacher, nurse, contractor, volunteer, or any other person associated with public schools. So the actual wording is that any public school representative who obtains information that a child enrolled in their public school is experiencing gender incongruence shall notify the child's parents within 48 hours of receiving such information. So any public school representative, it lists out a bunch there, but it could even be somebody who's there to fix a computer for an hour, and it's about perception. So if they just believe that someone might be transgender, non-binary, then they report that to the principal, and the principal is required within 48 hours. You all are probably aware that if a parent does not already know that their child is transgender or non-binary, there's usually a reason for that. And sometimes the school is the only safe place a student has. So this one is very dangerous. I did put the link at the bottom here. This comes from the Secretary of State. I will send this to you, Kathy, and if you want to pass out the deck as well, you can do that with the recording.
Yes,
Anyway, if you want
definitely.
to see the complete wording of the proposed bill, you can go to that link. So in addition to the forced outing, the second concern that they have is a ban on trans girls competing in athletics. They surreptitiously call it public athletics programs for minors, but it's specifically about trans girls. And again, this one went out for ballot for signature collection, but did not make it to the ballot. So biological sex means either the female or male sex listed on the student's official birth certificate, if the certificate was issued at or near the time of a student's birth. The important thing here is that many trans folks are able to get their birth certificate updated to match their gender identity. But this specifically says that it has to be the certificate at or near their time of birth. So if the person has had it changed even at 5 or 6 years old, it's that's not the birth certificate they plan to use. The second part of this one is any interscholastic, intramural, or club athletic team, sport, or athletic event that is sponsored or sanctioned by a public athletics program for minors must be designated as one of the following based on biological sex at birth of the participating students. So it's either female, women, girls, or male, men, boys, or coeducational or mixed. So then it says that only female students, based on their biological sex at birth, may participate on any team or in a sport or athletic event designated as being for females, women, or girls. Again, you see the focus is entirely on transgender girls. And it's about transgender girls and girls sports, even though it purports to be applicable to a wider audience. And again, this is dangerous. Sports are supposed to be for building team spirit, for getting exercise, for learning rules and regulations, lots of different benefits that we all know about participating on sports. And again, this is really broad because it's not just about like competitive sports. It's like intramural sports, like it covers everything. So it's very dangerous, and we don't want to allow this to happen. And then the third general area that they're coming after is on gender affirming care for youth. So they put in petition number 175 to prohibit certain medical procedures for minors. This one was not even approved for circulation. It was pushed by the Colorado GOP, but it never made it through the title board and the Supreme Court challenge. So in this case, the healthcare providers shall not perform or, sorry, I got a thing in my way on my screen here. Let me move this, sorry. Perform or offer to perform on a minor, or administer or offer to administer to a minor a medical procedure if the performance or administration of the procedures for the purpose of medically changing the gender of the minor. For purposes of this section, disease does not include gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder, gender incongruence, or any mental condition, disorder, disability, or abnormality. Medical procedure meaning surgically removing, modifying, altering, or entering into tissues, cavities, or organs of a human being, or, this is an important one, prescribing, administering, or dispensing any drug or substance, including but not limited to puberty blocker or hormone to a human being. Puberty blocker means a drug or device that suppresses the production of hormones in a minor's body to stop, delay, or suppress pubertal development. So the interesting thing about this one as well is that puberty blockers can be prescribed to cisgender. Generally, it's cisgender girls for what they call precocious puberty or early development. So this is extremely discriminatory because it applies only to transgender youth, but not to cisgender youth. And it applies to mental health as well. I don't think that it's called out as much here, but it's all about mental health, physical health as well. So again, this is one that they're coming for, and very dangerous. Those of you who are familiar with the transgender statistics, these kinds of things are really harmful and dangerous. So moving on. The good news is that we won. The work of the folks on the Freedom for All Coalition, which I think now we have up to 230 businesses, nonprofits, elected officials, candidates, faith-based organizations. All of us came together, were able to defeat there were 30 citizen-initiated anti-transgender ballot measures this year, and they did not make it to the November ballot. The thing that you need to be aware of is they'll soon be back and in greater numbers. So they are already promising to come around the next election cycle. So that's all about the anti-transgender stuff. Again, we were very successful in being able to block them early on. So we will hope that that continues. The Freedom for All Coloradans Coalition will continue on past November to continue to combat those kind of anti-trans things, or to support things that come along that are things that are helpful for the LGBTQ community. So Freedom for All Coloradoans is an umbrella coalition, and out of that came the Freedom to Marry issue coalition or campaign, which is active now and will go through the election in a few weeks beyond. So for any of you that may not know, in the Colorado Constitution, we have currently Amendment 43, which was a referendum approved in 2006, barely passed with 56% of the vote to add to the Colorado Constitution. And it specifically defines marriage as only a union between one man and one woman. And it's still in our Constitution today. So why do we not care? As you may recall, under Barack Obama, the Supreme Court heard a case called Obergefell versus Hodges and decided favorably in charge of Obergefell that made same-sex marriage legal nationwide. So in Colorado, we just, well, before I leave that, so you can see here the primary holding and exactly what it says. And so we all lived and loved happily ever after. But then what happened to Amendment 43? Still in the Colorado Constitution. So what we're trying to do now is to do some housekeeping and take it out of the Constitution, because if the Supreme Court, our current Supreme Court, who just overturned Roe v. Wade, if they were to overturn the Obergefell decision, then the right to marry would go back to the states. So in Colorado, we don't want to have this awful language in our Constitution. So Senator Joanne Janal, Representative Alex Valdez, Representative Brianna Titone took up the cross here and carried this forward. And in May, they were able to pass this resolution protecting the freedom to marry and to put this on the ballot. So we didn't have to go out and collect signatures. They put it through the legislative process. The bottom of the screen, you can see exactly what it says in the Constitution. Only a union of one man and woman shall be valid or recognized as a marriage in this state. And so that's what they were trying to correct. So these are all the folks that gathered on the Capitol steps once they got it through the legislature and on the ballot. So if you recognize any of these folks, make sure you thank them for their support. The interesting thing was we needed to have, presuming that all the Democrats voted for the freedom to marry, we needed to have at least one Republican senator cross the aisle. And as you can see here, we actually got 6 senators who crossed the aisle and 2 House of Representatives folks that also crossed the aisle. So it is pretty bipartisan. So again, we thank the folks who were willing to stand up. So we are Amendment J on the November ballot. This is exactly what it says on the ballot. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution removing the ban on same-sex marriage? We tried to make it as straightforward as we could. So the answer, of course, is yes. not that I can tell you how to vote, but it says right here, vote yes on J if you agree that there should be an amendment to remove the ban on same-sex marriage. If you go to our website, which is freedomtomarrycolorado.com, sorry, freedomtomarryco.com, there's a tab on there that you can go and hear from Colorado families. And we have lots of stories up there from folks who support and have a very personal story about the right to marry in their personal lives. So this is just one example of Keely and Danny. So if you want to get your phones out, or you can do this after I send out the presentation, we are currently phone banking and trying to get the word out. So you can scan here. This will take you to a Mobilize. You all are with the League of Women Voters and similar, so you've probably been to Mobilize, but this will take you there. We're doing phone banking Tuesday and Thursday nights between now and the end of October, and then we start even more frequently after that. We're also doing some in-person events. We're doing a statewide tour starting, I think, about the 10th of October. Since I'm in the northern region, we're going to be in Fort Collins, Greeley, and Boulder. And I know they're doing things all across the state. So you can also get to our website if you type in voteyesonj.org, and you can go there. So the other thing that you can do to help out is to donate. We just started our campaign. Well, I was hired in July, but I think this started in June, maybe the very end of May. And so we're playing catch up. As you likely know, it's expensive to run a campaign. So if you or any of your friends would like to help us reach our fundraising goals, we have a QR code here, or you can get to it on the website. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, I'm going to go on to the last screen here. Thank you so much for listening to me. We do have a hashtag, remove the ban. If you're into hashtags, again, here's my email address. And we urge you to vote yes on J, and then carry on after the election and help us with all of the transgender initiatives that are likely in the process. Thank you.
Reggie, can you stay? I actually have a couple of questions, and do you want
Sure.
to take the screen share off? I have a couple, like, I understand that all of these ballot initiatives are going to come back, but why? What is it that they're afraid of? The only thing I can think of is they think trans people are dangerous. But it doesn't make sense to me that there's any rational basis for this. So what is it? I understand there's this knee-jerk reaction that, they're different. Trans people are different, but what is it they're afraid of?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it, particularly with the youth, comes from parents. And this is my own opinion. A lot of those parents are religious, and they feel like their child is not going to go to heaven if they are transgender or LGBTQ in some way. And so it's religion motivated a lot of the time. People are afraid that it rubs off on their kids. They feel like it's a cool thing to do. Any of you who know transgender folks or are transgender know that being transgender is hard. It's not something that someone actually chooses to do on the whim. And so, but I think in particular, the parents are just, they have, like you said, a lot of irrational fears. The idea about girls in sports, they feel like it's an unfair competition. Their kids have like worked all their life. I could name some names of people who are speaking up on this, but And they're being cheated out of the awards. They don't realize, again, in my opinion, that it's really more, it's life and death. And if you start taking away the rights of a person in one area, where do you stop? And it's dehumanizing and it's dangerous for the folks who are transgender. And people, I think you're right, they're afraid of them. They don't want to compete with them. There's a whole thing about these transgender folks in the locker rooms. And from the transgender folks that I know, they would be devastated to have to change in a locker room that doesn't match their, so sorry, that it matches their gender identity, but they haven't transitioned yet physically. And so they would be, the gender dysphoria would be awful. So I think there's a lot of just a misunderstanding of who transgender people are. Basically, they're just like all the rest of us, right? They just have a difference of how they perceive their gender.
Do you have any ideas, or does anybody have any ideas on what can be done to counter this? Because, I feel like it's got a lot of movement behind it right now, and I'd like to somehow find a way to immunize people against these. Like, I just came here from Florida, and we had a lot of arguments about this in Florida, and people who could see it was irrational would even try to say, well, they weren't against trans people. They were afraid that cisgender boys would use that as an excuse to go in the girls' bathroom and hurt some girl. So it's like they don't want to say that they're discriminating against trans people, but they are, and it makes no sense. And so does anybody here have any ideas of what can be done to counter this false narrative that they're dangerous, or that they're given an unfair advantage? I mean, some kids biologically are better athletes than others. And it's my understanding that if a child hasn't gone through puberty yet, that they don't have an unfair advantage. Is that correct or wrong? Do you know?
Well, even if
It-
they have gone through puberty, it's not scientifically proven that they are superior in any way. And a lot of transgender folks are on hormone blockers and take the hormones of their true gender. And so, but I think I'll go ahead and speak, and then anybody else that has other ideas can jump in. But I think there's two main things that our campaign will be doing. One is sharing stories. The more you can humanize it and personalize it for people, the more likely they are to feel something and to own it and change their mind. I think about Tim Walz's son during the Democratic National Convention when he's saying, that's my dad, that's my dad. And people just realizing what a good dad Tim Walz was. So we need to get stories out there. And then the other part of that, which is part of the stories, is just pushing the facts, because much of what they are purporting and putting out there is just not true. We have that epidemic, as you know, at the moment in our country, and it's hard to combat, but we need to keep providing the facts, because most, if not all, of what they purport is not true. I mean, like the other day, a couple of weeks ago, Trump was talking about your kid goes to school as one gender and comes back 2 days later as a different gender. Well, that's like not true at all. Yeah, I mean, the schools barely have nurses, let alone operating rooms, right? But even if they did, it's not legal. So you just have to, we have to keep putting the facts, just blitzing. It'll be a completely different campaign than we are now, because for the freedom to marry, right now we're polling pretty high, and most people in Colorado are in favor, and we think that it will be it will pass. We don't want to say that because then people may not think it's important to vote. But anyway, but when it comes to talking about transgender issues, there's just a lot of ignorance. And I don't say that in a mean way, it's just people don't know. So for me, the biggest things that we have to do are get stories out there and stick with the facts.
Mhm. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add?
I guess what I would say is, I think the more we become acquainted with people that have different gender, it's confusing to some people, and it was confusing to me until I realized I had family members that I loved, and I could see what wonderful people they were. And I have neighbors where I live that, are just fabulous. And once people get to know other people on a human level, it changes everything for you. Now, I realize there are going to be those people who will never change their opinion, even by that. But I'm glad to see that, like in Colorado Springs every year we've had this Pride Parade that is huge. I mean, it's a huge parade. It's a huge event. And I think, and there are a lot of people who are cis, who will go to that and maybe become more enlightened. I just think the more people feel comfortable being out and being who they are and getting acquainted with other people, I think it's going to change. I really believe that. But you're going to have those few people who are just hard nosed, use it for political advantage. And those people are not going to change, more than likely.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of discussion, and I could probably comment on about 100 things here. I really appreciate Reggie kind of framing a lot of the issues, and I really agree with a lot of what, actually, I think everything that you've said is true. There's just so many aspects of it. I mean, I could talk all night on this because it is pretty layered and whatnot. Just some general comments is uh, the youth, most of the youth are cool with the whole idea of you're a little bit different. It's the parents, it's the political thing, it's the meat to the base and all that kind of stuff that stirs the pot. A lot of the kids themselves are fine. Kind of a personal story, when I transitioned pretty late in life at age 62 or whatever the heck it was. And my son was in college and had a visit there after I was kind of in the process of transitioning. And I asked my son, well, do you think your friends kind of, he said, let's go out with some friends. I said, that's fine. And I said, and these are college kids at CSU. And so do you think they need anything like a kind of a primer on 101, transgender? He said, no, they get it. They're cool. And that was sort of the end of the story. I didn't have to explain anything. And a lot of them are so much more accepting. I think the parents get in the way, and that's why the proposition or whatever that didn't make about, ratting on the trans kids in the school was just outstandingly horrible. And that's why 40% or whatever the kids just attempt suicide, because of all this, societal bullshit and whatnot. The other thing is being a trans person, I'm always in this quandary about, get the stories out, but when you get the stories out, then you out yourself. And
Right.
that's kind of the conundrum that I deal with a lot. So I don't blab to the world. It really, with trans folks, it really gets down, especially as trans women like myself, it's all about passing privilege. If you kind of look like, look like a female and and you can pass, then life is so much different than with somebody who's, 6'3" and 220 pounds and very muscular. And I've got friends that are like that, and they, it's like driving while black. It's driving while trans. I mean, those are the people that deal with this thing on a daily basis. I'm sort of one of the fortunate ones that it I don't come across as a guy in a dress,
Mhm.
and I guess the third point. I mean, I don't want to hog the stage here, but a lot of it's a wide community. It's a spectrum, and I refer to it sort of as the tyranny of the binary, which it really is. I have intersex friends. I actually, some of my trans friends have come up intersex on some tests as well,
Mhm.
and they seem to be kind of forgotten in the mix. And there are true biological things that go on in their life. There's some biological things that have gone in my life, which are sort of on the spectrum, if you will. Uh, so the binary be damned. I mean, that's kind of what the science is. It's just, but so I guess I'll stop there. Those kind of my 3 points for right now. But I'm happy to be a resource to this group. And
Oh, yes, we love to have you. Thank you very much for speaking. Um, do we have any ideas on how we can protect the youth that are in school and to keep them safe and let their friends accept them when all of this attack is going on at school boards? Um, you know, well, I know that yesterday in Douglas County School Board, there was an issue because a teacher had apparently showed a picture of the Mona Lisa and said someone had had a theory that it was a self-portrait and that Leonardo da Vinci was gender fluid. And so now the Moms for I can't get political. A group was saying that the teacher was a groomer and a pedophile. And that leads to restrictions on how gay youth can express themselves. Um, it leads to confining gay student alliances. It leads to students not being able um, to talk about themselves in class. So I wondered if anybody had any ideas about that or any thoughts about that. Um,
So again, it is multi-layer, of course. So the first line of defense, line of support should be the family. And we have a lot of families. I think last time I counted in our PFLAG group, we have families that have moved here from 10 other states because their parents were afraid for their kids. And so they just up and moved and were able to do that. So that's the first line of defense, but a lot of kids don't have supportive families. And so that's then obviously the school and their other support system goes. I think Jenna was spot on that the majority of their friends, people their own age, are supportive, except for those with parents who are not supportive, sometimes pass that down. But being able to be in groups, it's interesting because parents sometimes get upset that their kids hang out only with other queer kids, but the reason for that is that's where they feel comfortable and can be themselves and whatever. So that's part of it. But then the schools play a big role. And I mentioned too that PFLAG was currently working with another school board who actually has gender policies in place to try and make sure those get enforced. So I think, again, that sort of comes down to parent community, people like PFLAG getting to the schools, finding out what their policies are, making sure they enforce them, standing up. And again, One Colorado does a lot of that. They have safe schools programs and initiatives. The bottom line is that somebody has to step up and do it. The lady that started PFLAG 50 years ago, Jean Manford, her daughter and granddaughter were interviewed last year during the 50th year. And they said that they regularly had bricks thrown through their windows with notes attached on them. No sooner would they get their windows fixed and there would be more bricks thrown and threats and whatnot. So that's the other level is the legislative, which is where we're trying to make it so that the laws are supportive of equal rights for everyone, and then that those laws are enforced. So it's a huge task, but I think it starts with each one of us figuring out what we can do. This is my first year of advocacy. Not a political kind of person, and I'm not good at putting myself out there, but I finally was like, I can't sit back anymore.
Yes,
So
thank
that's
you.
my 2 cents.
I'm hoping that at that school, there are people who would support that teacher. I mean, a teacher shouldn't be afraid of being able to say something as innocuous as what she said, or he, I'm not sure which. I mean, there's been lots of theories about that. People have talked about that for years, and that's terrible. But I wanted to say one thing, because I'm going to have to go too. It's almost 6:30.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Talking about, Middlesex, and I
Yeah.
told you I was a reader. Well, this last year I read a book that was written back in 2002, and you may be familiar with it. It's called Middlesex.
Right.
And have you read it, Jenna? I bet you have.
I have.
It's
Yep.
very entertaining, but it's very informative. And for me, it was, because it was the first real first time I'd ever really heard about that particular biological issue. And if you've never read it, and if you like Greek history and that kind of thing, it also goes into that quite a bit. And it was written in 2002, like I said, and it's called Middlesex, and it's entertaining. I mean, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't just a serious, right? But this young man who actually was told he was a young woman when he was born, he goes through all kinds of things, and it's really kind of a fun story. And it's by Jeffrey Eugenides, Eugenides. So anyway, I'd recommend that book if you want to read something that is informative, but also kind of enjoyable to read. Yeah.
There's some pretty entertaining YouTube videos too, where the intersex kids step up and talk about what it's like for them.
Well, I grew up in Oklahoma, which is Native American, and my nearest neighbors were Native American. And one of their sons, I'm sure, we kids, his name was Gene, and he always carried a handbag, and he was very effeminate in many ways. And, as kids, we didn't understand that. And so after biology, we thought, oh, he's a hermaphrodite, because they talk about hermaphrodites in biology. And after reading this book, I thought, I just really wonder. I mean, he was a delightful person, but people back then didn't. It's kind of like Walls said, the golden rule, you respect your neighbors. Nobody thought bad things about the family or this young man or anything just because he was different. I mean, it's so sad today that we're so, I don't know, that we're so prejudiced, I guess.
Yeah. And it's an insanely cultural thing. And the Western civilization in the US is, the colonial mindset, if you will, and in all the things that were done. Many of the Native American tribes have the two-spirit, and those folks who are actually, revered from who they are, and kind of the ability to see many sides of the argument, if you will, of the issues. And
Mhm.
it's just the result of the culture that's come up, and then even some political stuff within the cultures. But I mean, it goes back, and I truly believe, I mean, that's a lot of it traces back to colonialism and the Indian schools and just all the horrible things we've done to try to make people conform to, you know, uh, my standard versus, letting them be people that other cultures do,
Mhm.
freely recognize.
Well, I'm proud to say that my community was not like that. So anyway,
That's great. We are running out of time here, but before we leave, does anybody have any thoughts of programs you'd like to see? I haven't planned the next meeting because I wanted to hear what people wanted. I have some ideas. I have contact with somebody who could talk about the racial equity study that's just been approved. Later on in the year, I have somebody that might be able to talk about the health effects of racism and the stress of living every day with racism. And I've actually got 3 views on that. My contact is in the African American community, but I know that the Indian boarding school study is going to concentrate on intergenerational trauma from the boarding schools, and that sort of plays into it. And actually, CNN had an article today that said that um, gay people have biological changes to their brain, and that um, especially, and that some of them are more susceptible to strokes. I can't remember. It was like, I don't know if it was gay men are more susceptible to strokes and gay women are more susceptible to depression or something, dementia. Um, so there's all of these things running through my mind, and I don't want to combine them all into one program because it seems too big. But are you interested in that? Would that be something that you would like to hear about? Or do you have other ideas of things you'd like to hear about? Anybody have any ideas?
Yeah, Kathy, I really like those ideas. I think all of them would lend themselves to kind of their own session.
Okay, thank you.
I would just suggest, and I'm not sure how we would do this, but have any of you followed a DEI kind of expert by the name of Lily Zhang? It's Zheng. She's on LinkedIn. And I'm sorry, Lily is non-binary, so uses the they pronouns, and I slip up um, on that occasionally. Obviously, I just did, but Lily has a great way of framing this in terms of, and Lily gets to the heart of a lot of these efforts and stuff, and she says it's really about outcomes. It's not about the DEI that's kind of getting a bad rap now, and some of that's for good reason because we've been doing it wrong. And
Mhm.
Lily's got great ideas on what that has to look like, and they really go into the whole idea of performative stuff. And man, if there's something that I have a great sensitivity to, it's the performative stuff. Well, we're having Gay Week or we're having a Pride, but
Right,
I'm
right.
not going to give you next week. I'm not going to give you the promotion. I mean,
Yeah.
How did you spell her last name again?
it's Asian, so it's Cheng.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
And
it's
they've
more,
actually written 2 books that are out, and you can probably get them on Amazon or possibly even in the library now.
okay. That sounds great. And the final question I have for you guys, unless if anybody has any other ideas, please.
I don't know when your next meeting is, but I have contacts at the Coloradans for reproductive rights as well. It's on the ballot also
great.
this November.
Thank you. What about timing? This seems to me kind of a weird time to have a meeting. Does it fit with your schedule, or would you like to make it later or something like
Works
that?
for
I
me.
mean, what do people think about that?
This is fine because my husband's cooking dinner. I told him, I said,
Okay.
you gotta cook tonight. I'm not cooking.
Yeah, I think these
So
are on a
we'll-
monthly basis now, at about this time, and that
Yes,
works
they
for
are on a
me.
monthly basis.
That works for
They're
me.
on a monthly basis. We're not gonna meet on December 25th, for obvious
Okay.
reasons. And I think I'm gonna move November because that's Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
but, but yeah, we're gonna try to meet monthly, and I really appreciate you guys coming and staying with me, and I hope that you'll make any comments, let me know if anything, that you would like differently, please. And thank you, Reggie, for starting us off
Thank you.
and all your information. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week or next month.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
How
Thanks
do I
much.
stop recording?
Okay,
Oh.
bye-bye.